Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start today with a question that it feels incredibly simple on the surface, but
Yeah.
the moment you actually try to answer it, it starts to slip through your fingers.
hmm
What is justice?
It's the oldest question in the book, and, maybe the most important one.
Right. And if I walk out of the studio and ask the first 10 people I see, or even if I went to, say, a top law firm in New York or London and asked the partners, I'm pretty sure I'd get variations of the same answer.
Sure.
They'd say something like, justice is following the law, or justice is treating everyone exactly the same. It's about rights. It's about the outcome of a trial, the written code.
That is absolutely the standard view. In the modern West, justice is almost entirely procedural. Did you follow the rules? Did you apply the statute correctly?
Like a checklist.
Exactly. If the answer is yes, then justice was served. The box-ticking exercise.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, we have this stack of sources today that completely flips that definition on its head.
It really does.
We are diving into a concept called Adl. It's the Islamic philosophy of justice. And based on what I've read here, this isn't just about courtrooms or judges. It claims to be about planetary orbits, the human soul, and shoe sizes.
It is surprisingly very much about shoe sizes.
We are definitely going to get to the shoes in a minute, I promise. But the mission for this deep dive is to explore how this concept, Adl, functions as a cosmic principle of balance. And we are going to put this ancient system in the ring with some of the absolute heavyweights of Western legal philosophy. Thomas Hobbes, Immanuel Kant, Hans Kelsen.
It's a fascinating comparison because it challenges our fundamental assumptions about what law actually is. We're drawing from comparative legal philosophy texts, some excerpts on Islamic jurisprudence, and some very compelling decolonial legal theory.
So let's start at the very beginning. The word itself, Adl. We hear justice, but what are we actually saying when we use the Arabic term?
So linguistically, the Arabic root adl, that's ADL, means something quite physical. It means to straighten, to sit equal, or to level something.
To straighten. It's interesting. It sounds active.
It is. Think of it less like the Western symbol of the blindfolded woman holding a sword, and more like a carpenter making sure a surface is perfectly level. Or, even better, the visual the sources keep coming back to is a scale.
Okay, the scales of justice. We have that in the West, too. It's on every courthouse.
We do, but the focus is different. In Western iconography, the scale is usually about weighing evidence,
Right.
Guilty versus innocent.
Sure.
In the Adl framework, the definition implies a state where everything is in its rightful place. It's about maintaining an equilibrium. If you have a scale and both sides are perfectly hovering at the same level, that state of stillness, that balance, that is Adl.
So it's not just an action like I am judging you. It's a state of being, a
Yeah.
state of correctness.
Precisely. And this is where we have to zoom out, way out. Because in this framework, justice isn't just something humans do to each other in a building with columns. The sources say it operates on 3 distinct levels.
Right, the scope of application. Let's break these 3 levels down because the first one was massive. Divine justice, or Adl.
Right, this is the cosmic level. The belief here is that the universe itself, from the way planets orbit the sun to the way biological systems work inside your body, is held together by a specific divine equilibrium.
So gravity is a form of justice.
In this worldview, yes, you could say that. Think about it. If the planets deviated from their rightful place or their rightful path, what happens?
The solar system collapses into chaos.
Exactly. Chaos, that maintenance of order, that cosmic principle that prevents things from falling into entropy, is Adl. The universe is just because it follows a balanced order.
That is a much bigger playing field than a small claims court. So justice is the glue holding reality together. What's the next level down?
The next level is individual justice. This is often called the justice of the soul.
Justice of the soul. That sounds very poetic, but what does it mean practically? Is this just about being a good person?
It's a bit more technical than just being good. It's about personal integrity. The sources describe it as a balance between 2 competing forces inside every one of us: your intellect and your desire.
Okay, yeah, I can relate to that battle. Daily.
We all can. If you let your desires run wild, anger, greed, lust, without your intellect checking them, you are internally unjust. You yourself are out of balance.
So before you can be just to other people, you have to govern yourself. You have to have that internal probity, that character.
Exactly. You can't export balance if you are internally chaotic. The sources are very clear on this. A corrupt person cannot create a just society. And that, of course, leads to the third level, which is the one we're most familiar with, social or legal justice.
This is the external stuff. Transactions, laws, society.
Yes, giving every person their due, or in Arabic, their haq. But even here, there's a nuance our sources highlighted between two very important words, adl and quist.
Oh, right. I made a note of this. They both get translated as justice in English dictionaries, but the texts insist they are not the same.
They're cousins, but they do different work. Adl is the abstract principle. It's that internal quality of balance we just talked about. It's the ideal.
Quist.
Quist is the external application. It's the doing of justice.
So adl is the theory, quist is the practice.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like this. Adl is the compass inside you that knows which way is north. Quist is the act of actually walking north. Specifically, quist is often used for transactional fairness, like using the correct weights and measures in a marketplace. You apply quist to ensure the transaction reflects adl.
That makes perfect sense. Now, we can't fully understand light without understanding darkness. We can't talk about justice without talking about, well, the bad guy. If adl is balance, what is injustice?
The term for that is zulm.
Zulm. And the definition of this, I have to say, it blew my mind a little bit because it's so simple but so visual.
It really is. Literally, zulm means putting something in a place where it does not belong.
Displacement.
Displacement. If justice is maintenance, keeping the stars in their orbits, keeping the blood in your veins, keeping your money in your pocket, then zulm is disrupting that order. It is taking something and putting it where it shouldn't be.
So, to use a really silly example, if I take a book that belongs on a shelf and I throw it in the sink.
That is a very minor form of zulm, yes. You have displaced the object, it's not where it belongs. But now, scale that up. If a ruler takes power that belongs to the people, or money that belongs to the poor, and puts it in his own pocket, that is zulm.
It's a rupture in the cosmic fabric.
A profound one.
I love that definition because it feels so much more visceral than just breaking a rule. It's like you're breaking reality. You're glitching the matrix.
That is the core of it. Justice aligns with reality. Injustice distorts it.
So let's move from the cosmic and the abstract right down to the pavement.
Yeah.
How does this actually look in real life? Because the sources gave us some really specific examples in economics and family law.
This is where we have to tackle the biggest misconception people have when they hear the word justice. The difference between adl and equality in the sense of sameness.
Oh, this is the shoe analogy. I promised the listeners shoes. Let's do it.
Let's do the shoes. This comes directly from one of the source texts to explain why equality isn't always just. So imagine you have two people, a teenager and a toddler.
Okay. Teenager, toddler. Got it.
The teenager wears, say, a size 40 shoe. The toddler wears a size 25.
Standard stuff.
If you give the teenager the size 40 and the toddler the size 25, that is adl. You have given each what fits. You put the right shoe on the right foot, literally. You put it in its rightful place.
Everyone is happy. Everyone can walk.
Now imagine you want to be equal. You think fairness means treating them exactly the same, right? So you do the math, find the average, and give them both a size 32.5 shoe.
Oh, that's a disaster.
A complete disaster. The teenager can't even put it on. The toddler is swimming in it. It fits no one. This is equality. Mathematically, it's the same number for both. But in the framework of Adl, this is zulm. It is injustice because you have ignored the reality of the situation in favor of an abstract and ultimately useless sameness.
Wow. That is such a clear way to put it. Treating unequal things equally is actually unjust.
Precisely. And this logic ripples out into the entire economic system. Take the famous ban on interest, or riba.
This is a huge part of Islamic finance, no interest. And people wonder why. Is it just some arbitrary rule?
No, it goes right back to the balance.
Okay.
Think about a standard loan with interest. The lender gives money and is guaranteed to get it back, plus profit, regardless of what happens to the borrower.
Right. If I borrow money from a bank to start a bakery and the bakery, God forbid, burns down, I still owe the bank the principal plus interest. The bank takes zero risk in my venture.
Exactly. The lender has guaranteed profit with no risk. The borrower takes all the risk. That is a fundamental tilt in the scale. It's zulm. The Adl framework requires what's called profit and loss sharing.
So if we go into business, we share the risk.
We share the risk. If it fails, we both lose. If it succeeds, we both win. That restores the equilibrium.
So it forces the lender to actually care about the success of the venture. It creates a partnership rather than a predatory relationship.
It aligns incentives perfectly.
Yeah.
And then you have zakat, or wealth distribution.
Which is often translated as charity, but the sources were quick to point out that's not quite right, is it? Charity sounds like something I do because I'm feeling generous on a Tuesday.
And zakat isn't about your feelings, it's a mechanism of restoration. It's an obligation. The idea is that if wealth stagnates in the hands of a few people, the 1%, the entire social system becomes tilted and unstable. Zakat is the mechanism to circulate that wealth back to those who need it, to straighten the line again.
It's like clearing a blockage in a pipe. You have to keep the flow moving for the whole system to be healthy.
That's a great analogy. It prevents the social body from getting sick. And it's the same in the marketplace. Hiding a defect in a car you're selling isn't just smart business. It's disrupting the natural order of honest exchange. It's creating an imbalance of information, which is a form of zulm.
Okay, so that's money. What about the home? The sources talked about family law and specifically this idea of complementarity versus identity.
This is, of course, a sensitive topic, especially when viewed through a modern Western lens, where the ideal is often identical roles and functions. The goal in Adl is a harmonious balance of rights and duties, but not necessarily identical ones.
The big example here was inheritance. It's a fact that in many interpretations of Sharia inheritance law, men receive a larger share of the estate than women. On the surface, that looks like the size 32.5 shoe problem. It looks unequal.
It is unequal in number, yes. But the argument for Adl here is all about context. You have to look at the other side of the ledger. Under this same legal framework, men bear the total financial responsibility, the nafaka, for the entire family.
So the husband is legally obligated to pay for housing, food, clothes, education, healthcare, everything.
Yes. Legally, yes. Even if his wife is a millionaire, her wealth is exclusively hers to keep or invest as she pleases. She has no legal obligation to spend a single dime on the household. His wealth is communal.
So the argument is that the inequality in inheritance getting more is balanced by the inequality in financial obligation paying for everything.
It's a balance sheet approach. You can't just look at the income column without looking at the expense column. This system seeks a total holistic balance.
And if you change one without changing the other,
Then it would be zulm. If you remove the man's financial obligation but kept the inheritance difference, that would be unjust. If you equalized inheritance but kept the financial burden solely on the man, that would also be unjust. The system has its own internal logic of equilibrium.
and it mentions parenting too, which I found really touching.
Yes, Adl isn't just financial. It says a parent must treat all of their children with equal affection and attention. If you kiss one child and ignore the other, you are committing a moral injustice. You are failing the test of Adl within your own home.
It really is a comprehensive worldview. It's not just follow the law, it's maintain the balance in everything you do, from the bank to the nursery.
Which brings us to the big showdown.
Yes, the philosophical cage match. We are contrasting this ancient tradition of Sharia with the heavy hitters of Western philosophy. Hobbes, Kant, Kelsen, Schmidt.
The Avengers of legal theory, if you will.
So let's set the stage. What is the fundamental ground zero difference in how these two worlds view the origin of law itself?
In Western modernity, broadly speaking, the story goes like this. Humans start in a state of nature. It's chaotic, it's dangerous, a war of all against all, as Hobbes said.
Life is nasty, brutish, and short.
Right, so we come together and we create a social contract or a state to make laws and keep us safe. Law is fundamentally a human invention. We make it to save ourselves from ourselves.
Okay. And the Sharia tradition?
In the Sharia tradition, law is not created, it is discovered. The word Sharia itself literally means the path to the water source. The law is a divine cosmic order that already exists. Humans don't invent it. They use their intellect and scholarship, which is called fiqh, to try and find it, to understand it.
So one is construction, the other is excavation.
That's a fantastic analogy. Now let's look at Thomas Hobbes.
The Leviathan guy?
The Leviathan guy. Hobbes believed the sovereign, the king, or today the state, is the absolute authority. The law is whatever the sovereign says it is, because the only alternative is civil war. Power equals law.
And the contrast?
In the Adl framework, the ruler is under the law. God is the sovereign. If a human ruler issues a command that violates Adl or the divine law, that command is null and void. There is a higher check on power that Hobbes doesn't really have in the same way.
Then we have Immanuel Kant, the categorical imperative. He's usually seen as one of the good guys in philosophy.
Kant is fascinating, but he creates a stark separation between the internal and the external. He says morality is what you do inside, your duty, your goodwill. Law is just the external regulation of freedom. basically making sure my freedom to swing my fist doesn't collide with your nose.
The law and morality are neighbors, but they live in different houses.
And they rarely talk to each other. Sharia completely refuses that separation. Ethics, rituals, and legal rules are all woven together from the same cloth. You can't be a law-abiding citizen while being a moral monster in the Adl view. The system is integrated.
Okay, now we get to the guy who sounds the most like a modern lawyer, Hans Kelsen.
Hans Kelsen is the father of legal positivism. And this is crucial for understanding our current legal system. His pure theory of law wanted to purify the law of all non-legal elements, like morality or justice.
So what is law to him?
Law is just a hierarchy of norms. It doesn't matter if the law is good or bad morally. If it was passed by the right parliament in the right way, it is law, period.
It's a machine. Correct inputs, valid output.
A value-free machine. The Sharia view looks at that and sees a soulless corpse. To a scholar of Adl, a law that is value-free is a contradiction in terms. Law exists to serve values, specifically the value of balance and justice.
And finally, the really scary one, Carl Schmitt.
The decisionist. Schmitt, he was very influential and very controversial. He argued that law, at its root, comes down to who has the power to decide, specifically who decides who's a friend and who's an enemy. It's about raw existential power.
And the contrast with Sharia.
Sharia, in its ideal form, emphasizes the protection of the individual against arbitrary power. Because the law comes from a divine source, no human, no matter how powerful, can arbitrarily change it to crush an enemy. It offers a shield that decisionism strips away.
This brings up the decolonial angle our sources mentioned. We tend to think, well, the Western way is the modern way. It's the evolution of law.
And that is what the sources call the secularism trap. We assume law must be secular to be modern and rational. But scholars like Lena Saleme or Ralph Michaels argue that this is just a European cultural preference masquerading as a universal truth.
And there is the state-centrism trap.
Right, the idea that only the state can make law. In the pre-colonial global South, legal systems were often pluriversal. You had multiple interpretations and schools of thought coexisting.
So there wasn't just one answer.
Exactly. When the colonial powers came in, they said, where is your single legal code? Where is your king who makes the law? They imposed this rigid, state-based system, and in doing so, destroyed that flexibility.
So we traded a system that could bend for a system that just breaks.
That is a perfect transition to our case study, because we have a concrete example of exactly that. Kelsen's positivism versus Adl in a financial crisis.
Okay, this is the inflation and debt scenario. So listeners, picture this. I borrow 1,000 units of currency from you, let's say $1,000, and today those $1,000 can buy a decent used car.
Okay, the deal is done. You have the debt.
But then a massive crisis hits. Hyperinflation. The currency completely crashes. Those $1,000 that could buy a car yesterday are now worthless. They can barely buy a single loaf of bread.
A situation that has happened in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Lebanon, Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real-world problem.
Right. Now, my contract says return $1,000. So I come to you, I hand you the $1,000, which are now basically wrapping paper, and I say, we're even, debt paid.
Now, let's bring in Hans Kelsen and the positivists. They're the judge. What is the verdict?
The rule says return 1,000 units. I returned 1,000 units. The form of the contract was followed. The procedure was correct.
Kelsen nods. The law is the law. You have fulfilled the contract. The fact that the lender lost the value of a car and got back the value of a loaf of bread?
Too bad for the lender.
It's unfortunate, but it is not a legal problem. It's an economic tragedy, sure, but legally, the case is closed. Lex Dura said, Lex, the law is hard, but it is the law.
That feels so cold. It feels technically right, but profoundly wrong.
It is rigid. It prioritizes what's called legal certainty over fairness. You know exactly what the rule is, even if the result is completely ruinous.
Now, let's bring in the Qadi, the judge operating under the principle of Al. What happens?
The Qadi looks at this and says, hold on. The number 1,000 is irrelevant if the value has been destroyed. The entire purpose of the contract was an exchange of equivalent value. Returning worthless paper is zulm. It is displacement. You are putting a loaf of bread value in the place where a car value belongs.
The balance is completely broken.
Exactly. So the Adl verdict would almost certainly be an intervention to restore that balance. The judge might say, you must repay the value that $1,000 held at the time of the loan. They might look at the price of gold then versus now, or a basket of essential commodities.
So if $1,000 bought, say, 20 ounces of gold back then, I have to give you 20 ounces of gold now, or whatever that is worth, in the new devalued currency.
Yes. The goal is to avoid zar, or harm, and restore the equilibrium. It prioritizes material justice, what actually happens to the people, over formal justice, what the paper says.
That distinction is massive. One system protects the text, the other protects the value.
And this brings us right back to why that decolonial critique matters. When colonial powers exported their modern legal codes to the global South, they often wiped out these flexible, equity-based mechanisms that already existed.
They replaced them with that cold legalism.
Right. And in volatile economies, where inflation and crisis are common, that rigidity destroys lives. It tells people, sorry, the rule says you lose everything. Whereas the older traditional systems actually had the tools to handle the crisis and maintain social balance.
It really makes you question what we mean by progress. We assume complexity and codification is always progress, but maybe we lost the soul of the law along the way.
It's a question worth asking, for sure.
So, to wrap this all up, we've gone from the orbits of the planets to the justice of the soul. We've talked about shoe sizes and interest rates, and we watched a philosophical showdown between Western modernity and Sharia.
It's been quite a journey.
If we have to synthesize this, I think the key takeaway for me is that we need to stop thinking of our way of doing law, this state-based, secular, rigid system, as the universal standard.
Absolutely. It's just one cultural perspective, specifically a post-Enlightenment European one. There are other systems that prioritize balance, outcome, and the specific context over abstract procedure and form. And as we saw with the inflation example, sometimes those other systems handle reality much better than ours do.
It's the difference between straightening the line versus just reading the rule book.
Adl reminds us that law is supposed to serve a purpose. It's supposed to keep things in their rightful place. If the law itself starts creating chaos or poverty or profound unfairness, then under this framework, it isn't really law anymore. It's just a system of rules.
That is a powerful thought to leave on. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one more provocative question to chew on. Something that wasn't explicitly in the text, but has been nagging at me through this whole deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We live in a world of massive inequality and increasing economic rigidity. We have more laws than ever, more contracts, more regulations, more fine print. But do we have more balance? If we have separated law from balance, if we have separated our legal code from Adl Fout, have we actually built a justice system? Or have we just built a really complicated, really sophisticated way to manage injustice?
That is the question. If the law is consistently putting things in the wrong place, can we still call it law?
Something to think about next time you're reading the terms and conditions. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.